Russell Thorburn is a published poet who was the first poet laureate of Michigan, chosen in 2013. He has, that I know about, 5 books of poems published. And he's originally from Oakland County. He grew up around here and went to Marquette, relocated to Marquette, I believe in 1973. I might be a little wrong on that date. And during the 1990s, he wrote for The Quarterly, published by Gordon Lish, who was very well known at that time as a finder of writers and a mentor of writers. He got his degree at pardon me. He published his first book at Western Michigan University with New Issues Press. And the first book was Approximate Desires, Poems. And then he published The Weight of Umber and Sienna, then Father, Tell Me I Have Not Aged, and The Drunken Piano, poems by Russell Thorburn. His next book, Somewhere Will Leave the World, was published by Wayne State University Press. I'm pretty sure that one was the one that caught the eye. He's got it right there, of a sort of mystic and savant who had a huge following on social media and promoted his book there. And that book got a great deal of sales, unusual for a poetry collection. I'm sure that Wayne State Press was happy with it. He's also done radio plays. Happy Birthday, James Joyce, which was aired on public radio 4 times, and his one-act play, Gimme Shelter, was scheduled to premiere at Northern Michigan University's Black Box Theater in 2020, but it had to be canceled because of the pandemic. So in the meantime, he has a recent book. My publicity says it's to be published in 2024. For all I know, it might already have been.
No, it's already out.
It's already out. Yes. Okay. And that book is Let It Be Told in a Single Breath. Now, if Jonathan has anything to add, we'd like to hear that.
Well, I'd like to say Pete Marcus helped me. He was the editor for me on Father Tell Me I've Not Aged, and he's helped me considerably on this current book. And he was my go-to person to find the right edit, the right ending, right beginning. And also Jonathan Johnson was a deep reader as well. So I'm glad you guys are here. So it's wish we could go get a beer afterwards.
It's really a pleasure to be here, Russ. So incredibly proud to know you and proud of this book. I just taught the book myself, actually, in my Master of Fine Arts class 3 weeks ago. I think I was probably the first person in the country to get a chance to teach it to college students, and they all pre-ordered it as soon as class started. To avoid going on and on, I'm just going to read a couple things I wrote in the blurb. When a new book of Russell Thorburn poems comes along, it's a highlight of the literary year for me. So it is with Let It Be Told in a Single Breath. More than any living poet I know, Thorburn invites us into the company of recurring characters inhabiting a fully formed world of the imagination. His work reads collectively like a vast ongoing novel in which we join personalities from John Keats to John Lennon to Marilyn Monroe and get to discover what they are up to these days. In this book, for example, I was delighted to learn that Keats and his gal Fanny are hiding out in the cold north, safe in an old hotel overlooking Lake Superior. And Thorburn and his readers get to play too, as he has the generosity and talent to write himself and us into this irresistible poetic Elysium. and sometimes underworld of his. My students were just enthralled, I have to add. They gave themselves a bunch of new assignments to extract and visit heroes, influences, villains from their own lives and from culture. And they wrote really, really well coming out of having read this book. So the book's already having an influence on a new generation.
Well, thank you, Jonathan. And thanks, Pete. Well, I'm just going to get rolling here because we're kind of on a time limit here. So a recurring character, I guess the wolf is a recurring character. And I'm going to begin with a poem from the Wayne State book, Somewhere Will Leave the World. Tracking the Wolf. Winter is a fist, its knuckles bared for blood and bone of any pugilist who defends himself like the bearded hunter with goggled eyes, who walks the wilderness where men lose themselves in the snow, struck again and again by those deft fists, breathless, eyes swollen from the cold, often doubled over from the icy gusts. Every whisper fogs up his glasses. The words he chooses curse this day of hunting for a wolf. The rocks he clambered up for a view, slippery underfoot, and the wind threads its needles through skin. Let the wolf live, his heart says, but he brought his rifle. Its heft helps him on the snowy path. For no reason except he's tired, the hunter settles on a rock to stare up at the moon. The wolf he's tracked crouches in the clearing, daring him to shoot, its frosty fur raised in a kind of whisper, as a hunter scratches awake a match to light a cigarette, then pockets its head. We're all animals, he breathes out and smoke, before the wolf becomes invisible in snow. So here's a recurring character, Richard Manuel. The current book has Rick Danko, Levon Helm, Richard Manuel, members of the band. This is a car accident. Richard Manuel crashes his Cadillac. His world speaks to him through the windshield, one crack dividing his before and after of alcohol consumption and love for a woman. The deer, caught in his headlights, turns to say, "You can kill me if you want, but I'm not going to move." Its head turned up for the crash, and Richard Manuel sees not a deer now, but a wife who got away through the woods, troubled by his drinking and nights across the line. "Jane," he cries out, as if he could warn her before his chrome, dented from accidents, collides with her thoughtful body. Her name can't save him from the crash on this mountainside, and he sees it almost in slow motion now, into the deer, then veering off the road and a splintering thud. He listens to the radiator hissing, touching his mouth that hit the rearview mirror. He sees his fingers are the color of blackberries in the dim interior light. He closes his eyes for a minute to feel the earth spinning through the snowy whispers, speaks the names Paula and Joshua, his children, as if to slow that last revolution. Tearing off his coat, he slides from his seat to walk the cold mist, and as above a moon dries, careful of the many stars. Let's go to John Keats. Jonathan was definitely an influence on me writing about Keats. And I have a series of hotel poems, and the Old Market Inn is where I lived there with my girlfriend, who became my wife, Emily, and she's my bright star in these poems. But anyways, I imagine John Keats checking in to the hotel with Fanny. John Keats one evening beheld Lake Superior. When we turned over in our dreams, we found each other standing there together, not in lone splendor, but her hand in mine. It was like John Keats had unraveled his breath, speaking of his first touch of a woman. Keats had checked in at the hotel and lived down the hall with Fanny, coughing but laughing in her arms. Or so I imagined, blue-eyed Fanny with her bare shoulders and her undying love at the old Marquette Inn, where one could see through a window the bright canopy of clouds over Lake Superior. Keats mumbled something about nature's gentle doings, but there was nothing gentle about the waves that destroy boats like the Edmund Fitzgerald. It was a dream after all, and I imagined John Keats telling his Fanny it was all right. But he had tuberculosis, and it would never be right between them in bed, coughing blood into both cupped hands. His hair tousled like an old mossy hill. He begged her to lay down, all arms and legs as she undressed. But would he ever be a man enough for her? Keats pensively looked out the window at the stars. He could dream of his life ending in bed with her, of the soul's pleasures, how a warm jet of blood escapes through the arteries, his own love for her, tightly rooted in his chest. If he could only breathe, touch any part of her now, and like all dreams, they end before they have begun. So I had a set list here, but I'm just kind of bouncing around freestyle now. Seeing Jonathan and Pete here, I kind of like sent me in a different direction. Another recurring character is Walt Whitman, and of Civil War soldiers who are kind of trying to survive, trying to heal from the war, from the slaughter. And I have this poem. The title "Sleeping Woman" actually comes from like a Herb Scott title, but it's not, the Devencourt painting at all. Sleeping Woman. Walt Whitman closes his eyes and remembers the dead from the Civil War. Too many bodies that he touched under the billowing canopy of the field hospital after their battle. When his forest gray hair falls across the wrinkled ren of a nose, his scar above the mouth wants to take wing from names he can no longer pronounce. He stumbles with his head swimming with their faces toward the cot where he sees a sleeping woman. His reddened eyes from no sleep stare down at her shiny black hair. As she shifts a full-blown breath in her unbuttoned nurse's top. He wonders at her breasts peeping from the loose clothes, her own way of thinking through her nipples. The old poet grasps his beard as if words were hiding there. The sleeping woman recognizes him, the poet who writes of the human body in its many forms. Not that she doesn't like seeing a man or woman naked, but she brushes these thoughts away. Whitman rocks back on his heels, asking for heaven, but suddenly collapses on her cot, almost pushing her off. Lord, help me intones to her bare chest, her eyelids fluttering like a dragonfly, uncertain where to land. Her knees meet her chin halfway, seeing the wound dresser stagger and gasp his breath, as if it too was a battlefield. So here we go. Another hotel poem. And the strange thing is that I met Jim Harrison in the same hotel bar 3 different times, 3 different decades. How that happened, I don't really know exactly. This would be the second decade, I guess, this poem about him in the bar in, I don't know, in the 2000s, not quite sure now. Drinking with Jim Harrison at the hotel bar. It was Harrison at a bar decades ago who spoke to me about Malcolm Lowry, his unfinished novel high on our list for reading that winter. But who reads that mad genius today, other than alcoholics or poets wanting a close look inside? To be alone is to be alive, Harrison said, inferring that to get inside the soul, as it was called, you had to pick desolate places of snow or shine. His grisly face of a one-eyed Inuit sage was overburdened by death. That coin, which was flipped up in the air many times to see if he'd live or die when it landed, heads or tails. Whenever we looked outside, the snow and eyelid of his appeared to twitch. Veins widened in his vast forehead. He ordered one vodka after another at the hotel bar, where I was a night porter, not exactly on the job or doing anything. The two of us suddenly throwing back drinks. I was working to support 3 sons and wife, our house of over 100 years. If I told Harrison this, I don't know. And after so many drinks, I'd be on the blacklist for working there without the enthusiasm of somebody on his way to the scaffold. That noose Harrison knew in his yes and in letters. Everybody got fired at the hotel. I was one, but only a few got to meet with Harrison, whose way of talking was a kind of percussion. You never heard such beats of resolute scienceless, his mind among the dragonflies and mosquitoes, where he'd sing of a girl with freckles and eyes like a sky that seemed to last forever, as long as he kept talking, as long as he kept moving towards something he knew would never be there again. So I have a new recurring character called Francisco in Mexico City, and how I got to know this guy. He's a a real person at this music repair shop for accordions of all things. Must have been reading an article from somewhere on this, and I thought, wow, that'd be a great poem to write about Mexico City. Also, I love playing the accordion when I can, and I haven't done lately, but. So I figured, well, this is the last place on earth in Mexico City. The fix-it guy, wearing a faded eggshell colored cap, cracks his melody maker from its case to play his high-pitched teardrop of a note. Everything I do is to improve the sound, Francisco mutters with a cigarette chumped down on his lower lip, wheezing more of his accordion that he's repairing today between his sun-spotted hands of 60. His eyes are of the night without sleep, blowing leaves across an empty plaza, forlorn calls of his empty stomach as his fingers try to burst open a melody. His slender figure of a man who's still in his prime leans his cheek a certain way that tells of a woman not yet forgotten, as his eyes roll back in this lost tango loved by Jewish Iraqis and Arab orchestras. His hips torn one way, while the rest of his body complains that it can't follow his feet on such an unimportant morning as this. The whiskey bottle full enough on a table beside broken accordions like his Excelsior, white as a snowy owl that roosts on the floor. But Francisco suddenly stops, as if seeing death in the corner of his Mexico City music repair shop. Those buskers and maestros of an exhausted earth on their way to the graveyard, despite little resurrections made by men like him. My dreams never caught their bus. I looked into the mirror and saw an older man staring back on the image of Captain Beefheart when he played at a ballroom in Detroit and walked on stage before the Kinks, wearing his crushed hello of a hat down over ears. I was younger then, without crow's feet and mottled nose, hairs riding the dirty shells of my ears. Dreams were shot with quick camera work for a young man in his 20s, trying to wake up before it was late afternoon, and that pillow where my boyhood lay became a drug to forget the draft. The silence in the house like a museum for my last days on earth, but that never came despite my trying to kill myself with a handful of sleeping pills. Dreams burned like Viking boats out in a mysterious harbor somewhere, and the war crept close on television. The curly, dark, tangled hair of a woman on shore beckoned before the dream channel changed, and there was Captain Beefheart. I had never given him any thought until that loss of hair and the bolder brow showed. These dreams never caught their bus and left me standing before the mirror where I mused over his verbose mustache, above that immovable upper lip, unable to get a break in becoming a poet. So this poem, I got the acceptance, well, I got the galleys actually a few days ago. And the strange thing is this reading is March 27th. The date on this poem, a Civil War poem, is March 25th, 1870. And I got the galleys from Michael Blanchard, editor friend from, Slant, Journal of Slant Poetry, and from Arkansas. And so it's kind of strange to get the 25th, 26th, 27th, but it's, this is March 27th, 2024. I like to think that the Civil War soldiers played baseball, that the Union was going to hold because of them playing a sport. Confederates, Union soldiers, somehow after the war, playing the game, Americans' pastime. So here we go. The baseball had the blood of many on its cowhide, March 25th, 1870. The farmer heard the sound of a bat tearing at the cowhide. One fielder had only one arm, who scooped up the path of the ball's trajectory, unsheathed his corn sacks gloved with no fingers, and took that delicate egg in his remaining hand. These killers played a sport in the sunlight's yellow and a wind that smelled of gangrene. There was a suicide squeeze, walking the line of dust, and the long-legged boy on third base ran home. The farmer knew his father, who had lost both legs a year ago. If he squinted into the sun, he could see him perched in a chair out past his potato patch. The blood of many was rubbed into the cowhide. The burnt crops harvested only ashes that year, and each bone tasted of sons who never made it home. Sometimes he saw Robert E. Lee rubbing up cowhide, but he had to wipe away the grit from the dust, blowing away their way of life. When he looked twice, there's only a one-armed hurler who bent for dirt to spin a curve, like the sun going down behind the moon in an eclipse. He would leave his bed, creaking floorboards in a sort of mercy, his wife, 8 years younger, ignoring his body as he wound a sheet around himself to stand in the field. His heart tried to keep up, but it let him go like an idiot, holding out his arms in the blistered starlight before he outran the sound of his angry breath. So I think I'm going to read one more poem here. I think I'm closing in on my time allotment, and then so used to work at a gas station in Marquette. I was standard across from the statue of Father Marquette, and so I viewed life, from the attitude of okay, late at night watching the cars come in and being overwhelmed by the only gas station open, at 2 a.m. in the morning. So this is a poem on those days. After the bars closed, cars would line up for gas. At the last pump in a sports car without any headlights on, a young couple kisses. The girl's blouse open for him on the last day of summer. Radio on, playing the Eagles. I can't help but look at her mouth, barely breathing with her bra off her shoulders, as if it's too late to change what is going to happen in a hurry, where he'll spread out a Hudson Bay blanket for her hips to lay in the grass. The neon sign of the station illumes my fingers as I flash my rag over their filthy screen. Much clotted mud on the side by the door, too, but that's not my job. After they swerved widely alongside a pump, I stand over a boiling radiator, visible to them but not seen as they kiss. Late at night, when anything can unfold after drinking, I dream of my lover asleep in her valley of a soft bed beside her daughter. The busty breezes keep me awake. It'd take me 10 minutes to walk home, but I'm working till daybreak. I search the engine for its dipstick, a flashlight aimed close to its heart. When I locate the carburetor, leaning closer, my body nearly swallowed by all those belts, I peer in with the girl watching me, holding the stick that wobbles in the wind. The other cars honking for service because I'm taking too long, straining to see more of her body. Her knees perched up in the bucket seat, her shapely thighs almost ghostly in their glow. And the car line out into the street, their last chance at gas before home, doesn't disturb me. The dipstick is there to touch, and with the flashlight clenched between my sternum and neck, I check the oil on it with my fingers first, unsure of the level, wiping the dipstick clean, the girl's face showing worried that I've seen too much, and looking ashamed now of my presence, as if the world was as if the world was riding in a thin, greasy line. Okay, thanks. I guess my time is up here. Wait for Ken here to come on. Thanks.